want to know who the top 5 best and worst below deck chefs are in the show's history, and I'm here to give it to you today. Let's start with our top 5 best chefs in below deck history. Starting with number 5 is Alicia from season 4 of Below Deck Sailing Yacht. Now, Alicia just ended her first season on the show, but she has been around for about 13 years as a yacht chef. She's super experienced, and she also got along with the crew really well. Her biggest moment in the show was cooking a 10-course meal for her guests and knocking it out of the park. She never had complaints. She always had the crew's meals handled. She had everything down to a T. She never missed a beat. And gosh, she was so fun on our screens too. I think she'll continue to be on the show. I think we may see her again soon, maybe on another part of the franchise. But yeah, I think Alicia is here to stay. Number 4, Ben, the OG. He's been on like 6 or 7 seasons across all the franchises because he was on Below Deck, the OG. He was one of the first members of the show from the very get-go. And he also was on Below Deck Med when the show started. And he came back to save the crew after Mila. If you don't remember Mila, she'll be on the later list of worst chefs in Below Deck history, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. But he's come in to save the day on a couple different scenarios. And yeah, he's drama. He's a phenomenal chef. He continues to be a great, influential chef in, the cruise and charter yacht industry. And yeah, Ben is definitely an OG. Him and Kate had phenomenal banter, and he was always entertaining. So yeah, number 4 is going to go to Chef Ben, the classic. Number 3 is Rachel from Below Deck. Now, she's had some turbulent years. So, she struggled with alcohol about halfway through her stint on Below Deck. But I think her relationship with Captain Lee is so endearing. And she is a phenomenal chef. People have raved about her food. And she's done some really spectacular 8-9 course meals across Below Deck. And yeah, she's funny. She's entertaining. She's a little crass like Aisha. Actually, Aisha's not even close to the things that Rachel has said on the show. But, never knowing what's coming out of her mouth, she would be freaking out, on the outside and yelling, and then deliver this just immaculate, beautiful meal. Her plating is second to none, and she's so great at taking the craziest requests, including one time when a guest's her jaw was sealed shut after some kind of surgery or injury, and she had to completely puree every single meal because the guests didn't want to miss out on things like steak and potatoes and all kinds of desserts and stuff like that. So she literally made milkshakes out of just about every food you can think of for this guest. And yeah, she goes above and beyond for guests, and you see that in her work. So I'm going to put her at number 3. Number 2 is Dave. Rarely do you hear the captains on these shows say that a certain chef is their number 1 favorite to work with. We feel that with Rachel because Captain Lee and her go hand in hand. They have a tight relationship. And with number 2, it's going to Dave from Below Deck Med. Now, he's only done 1 season so far, but we already know that Captain Sandy has shared across all social media and at BravoCon and everything like that, that Dave is her number 1 chef. He had quite a crazy relationship thing going on with Natasha on Below Deck Med when he was on the show. But regardless of whatever drama either she caused or he caused on that show, he would come out with some fantastic meals, and every menu was unique and specific. There's definitely some of those worst chefs on the show that kind of rinse and repeat their same favorites, their same traditional go-to meals, and he always kept it fresh. And yeah, I think the most telling thing is after he made mistakes on the show, the crew left the show raving about him and connecting with him deeply. So that shows what an ultimately good and better person he is after the drama he caused. So yeah, number 2, I'm going to base it on the captain reviews, which are that Dave deserves one of these top spots. And number 1, the undisputed best is Chef Marcos. He was on Below Deck Sailing Yacht Season 3. You may remember him as the chef who literally cut his head open and continued to cook and create like a 3-course dinner for the guests. He also has opened several pop-ups and restaurants in LA. He is a standalone phenomenal chef, but he also rose to the occasion on the show as well. He was zero drama, and I think just fighting through injuries and issues and just moving on and keeping things focused on the guest. I mean, he made some spectacular meals, and again, his plating was second to none. Some of the chefs we've seen on the show can come in and they don't know how to make a cake or something. Like they're very good chef, but they don't know how to bake. And he really excelled at everything on the show. So yeah, top spot's going to go to Captain Glenn's favorite as well as the franchise favorite, which is Chef Marcos. Now, there have been way more than 10 Below Deck chefs, but I'm going to go ahead and skip some of the ones in the middle and give you the top 5 worst Below Deck chefs we've seen on our screens. Hold on to your seats. This is going to be a good recap. Number 5, Chef Matthew from Below Deck Med. Season 6 is no doubt my favorite season of Below Deck of all time. So many great cast members, so many good villains, and unfortunately Matthew was one of them. He came in and kind of faked a leg injury instead of just saying he was overwhelmed, and then he kind of whimpered out, but he came back. But when he came back, he caused drama, and yeah, his fights with Lexi on the show was terrible as it is. That's why she got fired. But he always would find ways to rile her up and start things and instigate things with her that didn't need to get started. And so I definitely don't think he was like a cruise crew kind of guy. Like, he was always just creating issues across the boat. He was stressed out. He did crazy things. He stormed off the boat and quit at one point and broke a bunch of cameras along the way. So he was kind of just a nuisance, and nothing he did was spectacular. So there you go. Next up is Hendrigo, which was also named Kiko on Below Deck Season 5. You probably don't remember much of him except that he was pretty emotional. He was on the show the season that Hannah got fired from Below Deck Med, as well as the season Malia brought in her chef boyfriend at the time, who was problematic on his own, Tom. But, yeah, stop dating Toms, people. Learn from Bravo. And Kiko ultimately did not have the skills. He would cry, he would freak out, and then he couldn't deliver. So, sorry, Kiko. You know, he got fired pretty early on because he just didn't have what it takes. Next up is Leon from Below Deck Season 3. Him and Kate had all kinds of tensions, and at one point there was even a fire on board, and he tried to blame Kate for it. But regardless of if it was his fault or not, if you're gonna come for Kate, you better be right, and you better be ready to rumble, because she is a force to be reckoned with. So I'm not surprised that that went south. If the chef and the chief stew cannot get along, it's going to be a fight to the death. So Leon came in and he made the same 3 things over and over again. I'm pretty sure it was lamb shanks or ribs or something non-spectacular. And he just wanted to make that for every single meal. So, pass. Sorry, Leon. Number 2 of worst chefs on Below Deck is Chef Ryan. You've heard me in previous videos talk about what exactly happened to him and how he's voiced out after the show. But he was extremely problematic on Below Deck Down Under Season 1. And we continue to hear him yapping now a couple years later after airing the show. So, yeah, Ryan was not only disrespectful to everyone on the crew especially the stews and especially Aisha. But he was disrespectful to Captain Jason and ultimately the guests. Most chefs come in there understanding that the guests determine the tips, and so delivering all of their crazy requests is part of the job. And he seemed to think that he would be the one in control and making the calls when ultimately the guests have paid enough money to be on that charter to tell you what they want to eat. And they reserve the right to make some crazy requests. And he even had a scene where the guests had caught some fish and wanted him to cook it. It was a fish and like a squid. And he just threw them away and didn't make them, and he didn't care that it upset the guests. So he's not money mindset because he's not thinking of how that impacts their tip. He just kind of is egotistical and living his own world. So number 2, Ryan, gotta go. And number 1 is Chef Mila. Ooh, this Russian girl not only expressed on Bravo, a show on Bravo, she decided to say how she feels about the LGBTQIA community and that she doesn't agree with gays. She doesn't think it's normal. She said a lot of awful things. She continued to say that she loves Putin and that she loves that Putin doesn't let gay pride parades happen in Russia. So that kicks off the season extremely problematic. And then if all of that weren't fireable enough, I actually thought the crew did her a solid by not just telling Captain Sandy. I kept thinking, does Mila not understand that her captain is gay? What's disconnected there that you don't understand? Who's giving you your paycheck? I don't understand. Anyway, she continues then to show that she must have made up most of her CV and her history and told a lot of lies to get to where she was, because Sandy raved on and on that she was cordon bleu trained, and we didn't see that from Mila. In fact, we saw the infamous nachos that she forgot to put cheese on, that she wanted to serve to guests, along with tacos that came with the store-bought hard shells. I don't say this lightly, I can't cook, and I'm telling you, I could have kicked her butt in that galley. So it says a lot that the third stew on that season was able to replace her and get better reviews. She also couldn't bake a cake. She made cake that tasted like baking soda. So not only were you a terrible person, Mila, but also a terrible chef. So she's going to take the cake, if you will, at worst chef in Below Deck history. So those are my top 5 and my bottom 5. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to find out what happened to Chef Ryan, check out this next video and I'll give you the full scoop. Thanks. Bye.